Alright, quick question. What's a game that released on the PS2 in the mid-2000s where a snarky teenage protagonist goes up a tower which name starts with a T to fight with essentially their other half on the rooftop, and there's an evil mastermind trying to use the tower to become a god? Also, Cerberus is in it. If you thought Devil May Cry 3, you can go fuck yourself because we're talking about Persona 3 today, and it just got a remake. Now, in case y'all couldn't tell by just looking at my profile picture, Persona 3, specifically Fez, is a top contender for my favorite Persona game, and one of my favorite Megami Tensei games overall. It's got an unforgettable story with an amazing cast of well-written characters and fun, challenging gameplay that forces the player to engage with its mechanics while also doubling as a relaxing social sim. I always found this game to be an overall great experience. I was never one of those people who thought this game needed a remake. It's got problems, no doubt, but I find this game perfectly playable, even for today's standards. And I know most people who wanted a remake wanted one so we can have a version of Persona 3 with all the additions and improvements from both Fez and Portable, but to me that's a fool's errand. They'd have to make completely new animated cutscenes for the female protagonist. They'd have to make 3D models for the female protagonist exclusive social links. They'd have to make the answer good, and the question of which version has the better battle mechanics is dependent on the player. I prefer the battle mechanics of Fez, where getting back up takes up a turn, and attack all spells don't give you a 1 more if you don't hit every target. But some may prefer Portable's more streamlined gameplay that's similar to Persona 4. Fundamentally, there's no way to truly make a definitive version of Persona 3 without alienating a portion of the player base, or making Persona 3 feel like this weird hodgepodge of ideas just thrown together. So I kinda always thought that a Persona 3 Definitive Edition or remake wasn't a very good idea, and that the games should just be left as they are. Fast forward to around spring 2023, where this 2021 Sega business thing got leaked. It only really showed off 3 things. A way better looking Sonic Frontiers, a new Jet Set Radio game, and that. I immediately thought it was fake. I wasn't being one of those people who just tries to be negative all the time. There were genuine things in this clip that made me think it was fake. There's just something not right about this clip to me. But fast forward again to June 8th, 2023, where the Atlas social media guy posted the trailer to Persona 3 Reload 4 days before it was supposed to be announced? I don't know how you accidentally do that, but trust me, it won't be the last time they do something like that. Point is, I immediately ate my words, because yeah, it was real.
I'm not free, but I kept trying. Not strong enough, but I kept going. With all the hardship away, knowing that if I don't fight, I'll forever be mourning with pain.
After watching this trailer, I was absolutely ecstatic for the game. While a Persona 3 remake was not something I think was needed, this looked exactly what I would hope a Persona 3 remake would be like. It looked incredibly faithful to the source material, just with updated visuals and quality of life improvements. All of the social links from the original game were still intact. Tartarus was still at 200 for a hard climb, and shadows were back, which implied shuffle time was as well. But as time went on and we got more and more info in the game, my hype quickly turned into skepticism. I noticed the lighting of a lot of areas looked flat and unfinished. Instead of reworking the condition mechanic, it was completely gutted. The reverse social link mechanic has been severely dumbed down. The characters have new outfits and Strega's motivations seem to have been tweaked a bit, which made me worry they were going to make drastic changes to the story. And now there are these limit breaks called Theurgies, which looked super overpowered and were not in Persona 3 in any way, shape, or form. Not to mention, some of the new voices for the characters just didn't sit right with me. All of these concerns just made me not really care about the game anymore, and I stopped keeping up with all the new trailers entirely. I just thought to myself, I'll wait to see if it comes out, and if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. Now that the game is out, I can finally say whether or not this is a good remake. I did a full playthrough of both Persona 3 Fez and Persona 3 Reload for the purpose of this video, and I've been a fan of Persona 3 for about 4 years now. I have a great deal of love for this game, and I want to express what I like and don't like about this remake as honestly as possible. If you came here expecting me just to throw out mindless praise or hatred towards this game, you've come to the wrong place. This video is made up of my thoughts alone, and if you disagree with any of my takes, that's perfectly fine. In fact, I encourage y'all to tell me your thoughts about Reload in the comments. Also, fair warning, there will be major spoilers for all versions of Persona 3, so I don't want to see a single person bitch about it in the comments. With all that introductory stuff out of the way, I would first like to talk about the most surprising bit of news to me before this game came out, the new voice cast. Persona 3 Reload completely replaces all the English voice actors from the original game with a brand new cast for all major characters in the game. These new voices are definitely an acquired taste. When I first heard them in trailers leading up for the game, I thought they would at the very least be good, but wouldn't be able to fully replace the original cast. And when I first got my hands on the game, that was exactly the case. However, as time went on and I got further and further into the game, the more I actually grew to prefer some of these voices over their original counterparts. I think a lot of the new cast portray the characters much better than the originals, like Aigis' new voice sounding much closer to her Japanese one. But the one who absolutely nailed it the most was Zeno Robinson as Junpei. I'm fully convinced that his rent was fucking due at the time of this recording, bro. I can tell he put his whole heart and soul into a lot of his late game lines. And while I still prefer some of the old voices like Michelle Ruff as Yukari or Liam O'Brien as Akihiko, I do think the new cast does an excellent job at performing their roles. Something I really appreciate about this game is that every single social link scene in the game is fully voiced. This isn't like the original Persona 3, which didn't have voice acting for social links at all. Or like Persona 4 or 5, where only some ranks have voice acting. Every single rank for every single social link in the game is completely voiced, and it really made me appreciate some of the social links I didn't really care for that much in the original. Not to mention the voice acting is much better in a lot of places. There are a lot of line reads that are weaker than the original, no doubt, but some of the more serious moments of the game are done much better. There are a lot of emotional scenes in Persona 3 that are admittedly held back by poor line reads that just make me find it unintentionally funny or somewhat cringed and sad. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air to be able to take some of these scenes more seriously like the game wants me to. Speaking of which, let's talk about the story. By far my biggest worry about this game pre-launch was that they were going to overhaul the story and ruin the original vision of the narrative. This is a common thing for video game remakes, Final Fantasy VII Remake being the first thing that comes to mind. So thank fucking god that the whole story of the game is completely intact from start to finish. The story is completely faithful to the original, narrative-wise. The only real thing they changed about the story was the addition of new scenes that give further insight into certain characters, like the newly added link episodes for the male party members. These are what I like to call pseudo-social links. They're like social links as in you take time out of your day to hang out with a certain character and each scene is in order of each other. You even unlock a new fusion for completing them. The only thing differentiating them from social links is the fact that there's no rank or arcana attached to them, they just kinda happen. Either way, all the linked episodes are great, and it made me appreciate all of the male party members even more than I did in the original. Interestingly enough, Takaya also has a few linked episodes as well, though they don't really add or take away anything from his character. It's just here to make a deeper connection between him and the protagonist. Besides linked episodes though, another new addition to the story are these new outfits that are given to the party shortly after Fuka joins the team. I'm personally not a huge fan of these outfits. They look fine I guess, but I just think they're unnecessary and somewhat tacky. And did they really need a whole ass awkward looking anime cutscene to show them off? Anyway, these new outfits are tied to a new mechanic called Theurgy, which is a special cartridge the party can insert into their evoker to use a super powerful move with their persona. On that note, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, if you were to ask me, is the gameplay of Persona 3 Reload good? My short answer would be yes. But let's be real. If you're watching this video, chances are you're here for the long answer. So just hear me out for a second. Persona 3 Reload essentially takes the core fundamental mechanics of Persona 3 and updates them to be more in line with the later Persona games. The combat mechanics of this game are near identical to Persona 5. Baton Pass makes a return under the name Shift, but using it no longer increases attack power. And the changes made in Persona 4 onwards are still in this game as well. You have direct control over your party, hitting at least one enemy with an attack all spell will still grant you a one more, and you can make a move the same turn you get back up from a knockdown. Not to mention, instead of tweaking the condition mechanic, they just completely gutted it. I understand why these changes were made. It's to make the game more accessible to people who just got into the series with Persona 4 or 5 and want to experience Persona 3's story without having to deal with its very experimental gameplay. However, I feel like taking out all of these things unique to Persona 3 makes this game just feel like Persona 5 but with Persona 3's story and characters. While the gameplay is no doubt fun and addicting, there's nothing distinctly Persona 3 about it. And this is especially the case with the addition exclusive to Persona 3 Reload, the Theurgy mechanic. Theurgies are super powerful moves that your party members can use to either deal massive damage to enemies or provide benefits to the party. This is tied to a different gauge separate to your HP and SP, and each character has a unique way of charging it up. But let me tell you, when I say these are overpowered, That's understating it a bit. Any boss that was remotely challenging in the other versions of Persona 3 are made a complete joke with the use of theurgy attacks. There are some new battles in this game that are kind of built around you using them. However, the most baffling example of theurgies breaking the game is the final boss. In the original Persona 3, this boss was pretty much infamous for being really long and really difficult. Even I, as someone who is pretty skilled at Megaten games, took almost an hour to beat it when I first played it. So you wouldn't believe my shock when I saw that only 3 theurgy attacks brought Nyx down to about 25% of their HP at the final phase of the fight. The combat of this game isn't the only thing that was made much easier though. Tartarus has by far the biggest overhaul in the entire game. Now I will start by saying that this is easily the most fun version of Tartarus out of any version of Persona 3. There is so much freedom and new features in exploring it that it low-key makes the original version of Tartarus hard to go back to. However, I feel like you have too much freedom in Tartarus now. So much so that you can clear entire blocks of Tartarus in a single day no problem now that the condition mechanic is no longer here. To me, this kind of undermines the presence of Tartarus in terms of its role in the story. Calling Tartarus a hard climb in the original game would be understating it. It is by far one of the most infamously tedious dungeons in gaming. So when you finally make it to the top of Tartarus at the end of the game, it almost feels unreal. You get this feeling like, wow, I can't believe there's actually a top to this tower we've been climbing the entire game. As tedious as it was, it gave off the sense that Tartarus was a very difficult place to traverse through, making it feel like more of an accomplishment when you reach the end of it. I did not feel any of this with Reload's version of Tartarus. In no way did I feel any sort of vulnerability when exploring this place, or that it was any major threat to humanity, because of how quickly and effortlessly I was steamrolling through it. In fact, about halfway through the game I stopped engaging in normal enemy encounters completely and only faced the mini-bosses behind Monad doors and the usual Tartarus guardians. And no, I'm not exaggerating. I fully understand that this is a me thing. I already know a ton of people who vastly prefer how Tartarus is in Reload, and that's totally valid, as I agree with them to an extent. However, if you're a pretentious asshole like me and like when games tie its narrative and gameplay together, as flawed as it may be, you'll get the feeling that there's just something missing in this version compared to the original. Something I can give genuine praise about Tartarus though is its aesthetics. In terms of visuals, Tartarus has received a massive glow up. Every block looks completely distinct from each other. Block 3 and Block 6 specifically receiving massive overhauls in terms of how they look. It doesn't just stop at how it looks, however. They're also distinct by the way the floors are generated, making each blocks of Tartarus much more memorable compared to the original, which were more or less the same floors plastered 264 times just in a different color. On the topic of aesthetics though, let's talk about the game's visuals, which to me are incredibly hit or miss. I already praised how each block of Tartarus looks, but another thing I can give praise for are the characters' models. These are without a doubt the best looking character models in any Atlas game. Every character is so expressive, and the glow up between the models in Reload and Persona 5 is super noticeable when put side by side. Something I appreciate about the character models in this game is that they are brand new. When thinking of a Persona 3 remake, I always thought Atlas would lazily recycle the models from the Persona 3 dancing game and call it a day. But surprisingly no, they went the extra mile and made every character model from the ground up, and I gotta respect that. And this is where my praises for the visuals of the game end. And that was not a joke. This game just feels like an Unreal Engine fan remake at times with how some of the environments look. Some areas look fine, but then you got shit like the dorm, which for whatever reason looks way too bright and flat, and frankly unfinished. Or the way the school looks in the afternoon, which genuinely just looks like a Roblox game to me. And the final boss was made way too bright and kind of kills the mood of it. Not to mention the recycled of Persona 5 NPCs looks extremely jarring and out of place next to these high quality ass models of the main cast. And Nyx! Oh god. What happened to your face, dog? The way the story is presented is once again a mixed bag. Some cutscenes are made more cinematic, which I think is a nice touch since a lot of cutscenes in Persona 3 just amounted to characters standing around and talking. There's still a lot of that in here, but I feel like the cinematic cutscenes make a lot of the scenes much more memorable and interesting. I especially love what they did with Chidori's death scene and the ending of the game. They look fantastic and blow the original out of the water in every way. But trust me when I say, when they drop the ball with the presentation, they drop it hard. Some scenes that were an animated cutscene in the original game are just completely normal cutscenes now. I would have expected them to at the very least convert these scenes into one of those 3D cinematic ones, but no, they're just brought down to these standard cutscenes that are used for 90% of the game, which just makes them way less memorable and infinitely more lame. And with the cutscenes that are made cinematic or animated, most of them are a huge downgrade from the original. Just take a look at the protagonist's awakening scene and you tell me which one is more visually interesting.
city of thy soul I come. I am Orpheus, master of strings.
As we suspected.
And I feel like it's important to bring up the inconsistent quality of the visuals because this is a $70 video game that overall looks worse than Persona 5, which I think has fewer visual shortcomings compared to Persona 3 Reload, and it's not even a full price game. Hell, even the original Persona 3 had a more consistent visual style than Reload. It's obviously rough around the edges as it is a PS2 game, but I find the lighting and overall presentation of the original to be superior. But the downgrades don't just stop at the visuals. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, Persona 3 Reload has by far one of the worst soundtracks in the entire series. Almost every remix in this game is inferior to the original, and there's very few that I actually like, if at all. I'm not sure how to describe it, everything just feels like it was made by a fan. Now, why do I care so much? Things like graphics and music don't really affect the quality of the story or the gameplay, so why do I put so much emphasis on them? Well, it comes from my love for the original game. Persona 3 had this very distinct style to it that just oozed its early 2000s attitude and moodiness. The colors were very muted, the animated cutscenes looked like something out of an obscure show that would come on Adult Swim at 3 AM, and the protagonist had so much emo swag. In contrast, Persona 3 Reload almost feels too clean. The colors are very bright, some of the cutscenes are missing a lot of the unique and beautiful compositions the original had, and my man Makoto lost all of his sauce. It kinda just feels like, despite having the same story as the original, it lacks all of the personality it had. I know I've been extremely nitpicky this entire video, but I just wanted to be as honest as possible with my thoughts about the game. Persona 3 is one of my favorite video games of all time, and I really wanted this remake to blow me away. But as a fan of the original, I can't help but feel like there's just something missing about this remake. And I can't help but feel like the people that see this game as a replacement for the original are crazy. To me, every version of Persona 3 has a reason to exist, even Persona 3 Portable. Maybe you're like me and like everything about the original and Fez despite its very experimental mechanics. Maybe you like the more streamlined gameplay and female protagonist of Portable. Or maybe you just started the series with Persona 5 and want a more accessible way to experience the story of Persona 3 through Reload. Some people are going to prefer some versions over others, and that's okay. Something that I will not do is say that somebody is in the wrong for preferring this version. Everyone has a different idea as to what makes a good gameplay experience, and I understand that. While I like all of the weird-ass mechanics of the original Persona 3, some people may not care for them and just want to have fun experiencing the story in their own way, and that's totally valid. But as to where I stand on this remake, I feel like it is a great game, but not a replacement for the original.
Question, no asses, will this be for nothing? I felt so worthless and nervous, disgusting. I won't be so broken unless I conducted diligently, patiently, and trusted myself. Nothing was given to me, so gonna go earn it. Every pain needs another motivation, I burn it. Reputation doesn't stop death, but it stops life. Accept an open mind for life.
Wait, they didn't include the annoyed expression Yukari makes in the maid costume? Never mind, this remake fucking sucks.
All we need to leave is from the start.